Hello, this is Michael Garrick, and this is PoppinCulture Podcast. Here with me is my guest, Chris Corrado. He's has his own entertainment business. He sells insurance and investments. He also has his own political show, and he's the best promoter I know. Chris, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks, Mike.
So, with PoppinCulture, we're all about pop culture and the people that love it, and we're also about the cultures that influence pop culture. When you think of pop culture, what comes to mind?
Pop culture, a lot of different things come to mind. I don't want to say like necessarily mainstream, but definitely stuff a lot of people have at least heard about as far as movies, music, actors and actresses, athletes.
Okay. So since you're here, I thought we would talk about horror. I know I'm a big fan of horror, and I know you're a big fan of horror.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have like I guess, top 5 horror movies that you enjoy?
Absolutely. I'm definitely a big fan of the Friday the 13th with Jason.
Yes.
And then I really like George Romero's zombie movies.
Okay.
And I was actually happy when they did some spin-offs and did Return of the Living Dead.
Nice.
Which, came out in the 80s. Hellraiser. Definitely like the Nightmare on Elm Streets, too.
Nice. That's a great list. That's great. When it comes to Hellraiser, do you like the way like the latest movies have been, or you kind of think they should have stopped?
I haven't watched the newer ones as much since they had switched pinheads. For the longest time, it was Doug Bradley, who I actually met once, which was pretty cool.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, they do horror conventions in Charlotte every year.
Nice. Okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, for like the last, I guess, if I had to guess about the last 7 years or so, if not more than 7 years, it might be more like 8 or 9. They do at least one, and they actually did get one in at the beginning of this year.
What was the name of the one you went to?
So the one that's been going on for almost 10 years is called Mad Monster Party.
Nice. Okay, that's
And
good.
then a newer one that's come about a couple times is Days of the Dead.
Okay, I'll definitely have to check those out. Okay. What time of the year do they usually do 'em?
Usually like late winter, early spring.
Okay. Cool. So do you have a favorite like horror director
That's tough. I definitely like
or
like I said,
top 5? I guess.
definitely like George Romero
Of course.
because
Yeah.
he was responsible for our zombie movies that we all know, and he also had something to do with the creep shows as well.
Yes.
I don't know if you've ever seen those.
Yes.
So definitely George Romero, and I definitely do like Wes Craven.
Yeah. R.I.P.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, R.I.P. to both of them.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah, both unfortunately are no longer with us.
Okay.
Wes Craven, obviously for Nightmare on Elm Street, he did Scream, which is more like suspense thriller, not as much horror. But he also did a movie, and I don't know if you've ever seen it. I think Wes Craven's first movie is Last House on the Left.
Yes, I've seen it.
Okay.
Scream was just. I had seen Scream before, but I never noticed that he directed it. So when I found out like years later, I was like that was very different tone for him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, when the 90s came about, horror wasn't as big anymore. They were more big on suspense thrillers or like, and later on, more like psychological stuff.
Yes, definitely. I would definitely say that with Saw, especially.
That's it.
Yeah, with Saw, it was just. I mean, the slasher was there, but like Saw kind of like shoved it to the side. I would say. You grew up in the '80s, I believe.
80s, yeah.
Yeah. Can you just explain, like, pop culture wise, how big was the slasher at that time?
Well, the slasher was going to be the number one horror guy to go to because you had, Halloween started in the late 70s, but they continued on into the 80s. I believe they put out 3 ones with Michael Myers in the 80s. There should have been 2. 3 wasn't actually him. It was a little bit different. And then 4 and 5, I believe, came out in the 80s. And then Friday the 13th, of course, was mostly the 80s too. Then Nightmare on Elm Street, pretty much mostly the 80s. Hellraiser, 80s. The first Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out in the 70s, but they did have, I think, 1 or 2 come out in the 80s. Even Chucky was I believe, Child's Play was the late 80s. A little bit different than what we were accustomed to. I still enjoyed him too.
I was born in '92, so I'm more of a '90s person. Why didn't people like Season of the Witch, Halloween 3?
Well, believe it or not, more and more people I think do like it.
Okay.
It just wasn't the same as seeing Michael Myers do his thing. So it's like it's called Halloween, yet
Sure.
where's Michael Myers?
Sure.
You know, they did show. I think someone was watching the original
Yep.
Halloween in that movie, but it was something different. I don't know why they did that, and it's not that it was bad. It just wasn't what people necessarily wanted.
Yeah, when you word it like that, you're right. They could have definitely just called it something else, and it probably would have been a hit. Monster Squad, were you a fan?
Of course, yeah, man, and it had a lot of the originals, like horror icons. You know, it wasn't like slasher, but these are pretty much the guys that big part of the beginning of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it was kind of a funny movie too.
Yeah, Universal, like that was definitely one of their ways to like get people to watch the older movies. If it wasn't for Monster Squad, I would never went back to watch like the original Universal monsters. Man, I didn't realize Josh Brolin, if I'm pronouncing his last name right, I didn't realize he's been acting that long. Like to see a young him is wild.
Yeah, I mean, you look a lot of those older movies, you see people like, you didn't even think that they were in something like that, or didn't even know they were around back then, but that's how a lot of them got their start. I mean, there's a lot of famous people now that got their start in, horror movies. You would never think, Kevin Bacon, first Friday the 13th, or Johnny Depp, first Nightmare on Elm Street, Jamie Lee Curtis, first Halloween, Jennifer Aniston was in the first Leprechaun.
Yes.
Lawrence Fishburne was in part 3, the third Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yes. She definitely was in the Leprechaun, yes. How do you feel about those movies?
They're funny.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and that's Warwick Davis. That's who played Wicket. And, the star, was it Return of the Jedi? He was the Ewok Wicket. And that's Willow, too. Which I believe also is an 80s movie. Not horror, but, an 80s movie. So, yeah, I thought The Leprechaun was funny.
Nice. Let's put the water right there. I just want to make sure they can see your face. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Just didn't want any chance they blocking your face. So, to stick with the 80s, was it any time when you saw one, did you like not think they would make a sequel, or you were pretty sure back then if they made one, it was going to be at least 2 more?
Well, a lot of my, my favorite horror movies, or when I first started watching them, they already had been,
Okay.
sequels and whatnot, because the first Friday the 13th came out, I believe, in 1980. So I wasn't even born when the first one came out. So when I first started watching them, they were already in, getting towards like 4 or 5. So, and then, first Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984. So by the time I first started watching those, they were already getting close to 2 and 3, etc. And then once again, first Halloween, I wasn't even a thought yet,
Nice. Okay, that's true. Okay. When it comes to Halloween and Friday the 13th, do you think they're too similar, or do you think that was by design?
Well, I think Michael Myers, Halloween definitely inspired slashers to come about, but not necessarily. They had their similarities and they had their differences, a different storyline. So, you can get away with it. It's like saying that 2 superheroes is so much the same. It's like, think how many superheroes there are. You keep going on. Kind of like, let's see, Pinhead and Freddy. Both would talk and, pretty much torture you, but they still had totally different styles.
Nice. You said Friday the 13th was your favorite of
Yes.
all? Not trying to be funny, but like, did you find it funny the way he got his mask?
You mean you got it from the guy who was an actor?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. I mean, you didn't really necessarily expect that. It was just a guy that had a hockey mask, that he was doing for practical jokes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the third one, that's probably my favorite one, or close to it.
I think they had the best kills, in my opinion, in the third one.
Yeah, I think 2 through 4. Third one was really good because it was 3D, which unfortunately I've never seen in the 3D version, but that would be really cool to see.
Me either. Oh, okay. Wow, that makes sense. Yeah, it was 3D. Yeah.
He shot the girl with the arrow that comes out. He squished the guy's head to where his eyeballs popped out. That's 3D right there for at least 2 of those.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I would have loved to see that too. Like, that'd been cool.
I'm sure there's a way to pull it off.
Sure. So as much as like horror has been great, do you feel like you're tired of them doing the same story over and over again, or do you like the fact that they are doing remakes?
Yeah. Oh, as far as remakes go, it just depends. Everyone's pretty different about that. I think some people there's a lot of horror groups on Facebook, So some people were kind of like talking and debating, about the remake of Halloween. And people have two totally different stances on that. Some people say, look, we like the mystery behind Michael Myers. Why'd you change it? And some people are like, no, I like the way Rob Zombie did a backstory. So there's two totally different types. I like it. I like both of them.
Okay.
But some people are very serious, adamant about that. You don't make a backstory. And then some people are like, no, you should. So I think that's where you could get away with doing remakes if you stay true to it, but yet do something a little bit different.
Yeah. I can't say I was the biggest fan of Rob Zombie's, but I saw where he was coming from. Like, he definitely used like creative control to the max. Like, yeah. So it was definitely, when you see it, that's the Rob Zombie version.
Oh yeah.
You can't mix it up at all. Are you a fan of the Universal monsters at all?
Yeah, totally. You know what? I was very blessed, and I don't know if he's still alive, but one of the last horror shows I was telling you about that I went to a few years back, they actually did it in Rock Hill at York Technical College.
Okay.
I think it's the first one that I saw that they didn't do in Charlotte. They brought it to Rock Hill, and they did it at the community college I went to years back. And I met the guy who was the creature from the Black Lagoon. So you got to think, that movie came out in the 50s.
Yeah. Okay.
Here we are in 2017. He's still alive and signing autographs. So I always thought, man, that's something that I don't think they ever remade that or did much with that.
No, I don't believe so, no.
Yeah, if you look at a lot of other movies, stuff has been remade and, switched up and whatnot. So I was very blessed to get his autograph. And what was also cool, just to sidestep real quick, if you see the original Night of the Living Dead from the 60s, if you remember the brother and the sister who were in that, they were both at this horror convention.
Wow.
And like I said, this is the 60s, and, so they're obviously not spring chickens anymore. And they sat next to each other, and I got both of them to autograph the same picture, both of them in it.
Okay. Man, wow, that's great, man. I'm happy for you. The only person so far I've got a picture with in horror is he passed away, I believe. He was in House of 1,000 Corpses.
Spaulding? Captain Spaulding?
The chubby clown.
Yeah. I don't remember. I can't remember his name off the top of my head in real life, but he was Captain Spaulding in those movies.
I went to a haunted house in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and he was there taking pictures, and he looked sick, but he was very nice and in good spirit. Man, that's awesome, man. I remember that's like you said earlier. Like, it is hard to make remakes because if you remember, Universal was trying to do that with the Tom Cruise Mummy, and they were setting up all the layers on how to add new characters. And after that flop, they were like, "We'll just do solos." The remake of The Invisible Man was pretty clever.
Okay.
If you haven't seen, you should definitely check it out.
Okay. I recently watched Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Okay.
Because if you watch that, it's a totally different Frankenstein.
Yep.
The Universal Frankenstein or creature Frankenstein, because people get that messed up all the time. It's Frankenstein's monster. Frankenstein's the doctor.
Exactly.
Oh, but hey, look, it's Frankenstein. It's actually not. Frankenstein was the name of the doctor. It's Frankenstein's monster or the creature, whatever you want to call him. But they actually did that more based upon the book, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, with Robert De Niro, which is pretty interesting, just showing his range and what he could do. He played the creature Frankenstein the way I believe he was originally supposed to be, not, the square-headed, Herman Munster guy we all know and like.
Yeah. Have you ever got a chance to watch The Hammer?
No.
Okay. There's it was close to the time Universal, and it's like a Hammer, and that's the name of the studio, I believe. And they came up with their own monster movies, and they're pretty good.
Okay.
They didn't have the same production level, but they were okay, and they were more based on the book also.
Okay.
So to get back to the evolution of horror, where would you say they went from slashers to thrillers? Do you think the slasher is coming back, or do you think they're going to try to mix the both together?
Well, I definitely think it's somewhat come back, and I need to catch up on this because another icon who I really, really like is Candyman.
Yes.
So if and another director I really like is Clive Barker, because
Yes.
Clive Barker did Hellraiser,
Yep.
and then he did Candyman.
Yes.
And Candyman's one of my favorites. I actually met Tony Todd, the guy who plays him. He's cool too.
How tall is he in real life?
He definitely dwarfs us.
Okay.
Well, I should say okay, I said that right.
Okay.
Yeah, he's probably, I guess maybe 6'2".
Okay.
From what I remember, he's a tall dude. Yeah, and I did enjoy meeting him. It was really cool. So, and that was kind of like a horror movie that came out in the 90s that didn't start from the 80s. So as you can see, they still keep coming, and I think they remade Candyman and let Tony Todd play in the remake. He actually was Candyman again in the remake.
Yeah, it comes out. It was supposed to come out this year. It's coming out next year.
So it hasn't officially come out
No,
yet?
no, not yet.
Well, I'll be watching.
Oh, definitely. Can't say I'll be going to theaters anytime soon, but I take that back. I actually did go see Tenet in theater. Tenet. Got to see the whole movie by myself. There was nobody in theater. But yeah, I think that's going to be very, very good.
And they remade, Child's Play.
What did you think about it?
Well, like I said, once again, they changed it. They had to make, but when they change something, it doesn't necessarily make it bad. You got to keep up. It's like keeping up with the times. So if you notice, the way they did Chucky wasn't the same type of doll.
Spoiler alert. Yes, exactly. I love the fact that they made it very modern. Not saying that voodoo couldn't work, but it was just I love a remake that's like, look, this is our version. We're not going to do the same steps. You're not going to know what's coming next. And I think that's very, very clever of them. Plus the kid actor was perfect. They cast the right guy for it.
Yeah, I did think the kid did a good job. And then you had, of course, Mark Hamill, who plays Luke Skywalker, do the voice, and he sounded different, and it was fine. It wasn't bad different. It was he did a good job.
I felt like he had a little bit of he does the Joker voice also in Batman animated series. I felt like I had a little bit of Joker in it, but it was perfect. He definitely did an amazing job. To bounce back a little bit to the 80s, is there any horror movie that you particularly like from that time that isn't that popular?
An American Werewolf in London.
Okay.
And Sleepaway Camp.
I've seen I think I have seen Sleepaway Camp. Okay. Yeah, I do like American Werewolf in London. That was that actually shot in London, or you don't know?
I'm because it was Piccadilly Square. Is that what it's called?
I believe so.
In
yeah.
London.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, they filmed that right there. So that at least that part was filmed in London.
Okay.
And then the whole movie wasn't filmed in London. Naturally, you had the countryside of England too. So yeah, that's probably, I think, what they were able to do with special effects back then was incredible. So if you ever go back and watch that, you'd be like, wait a second, this was some really good work from back then. I don't know how much better they can make it now.
I try not to hit the table. I'm sorry, bro. I should have told you before, but try not to hit the table. It picks up, no problem. When like you said, that was perfect for the time, but I'm trying to think of who the guy was, because he worked on a lot of other big movies. The guy that did the costumes and did the transformation. I want to say it's the same guy that did Alien, the movie Aliens, but I can't think of his name right now. But he nailed it. Okay. He won 2 awards for that, I believe.
Probably did. I mean, what he was able to do with makeup is, I don't think it's the same guy. I know a guy who's really, really big, but I don't think he did this movie. It's Tom Savini, who I'm sure you've heard of before.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I don't know if he had anything to do with An American Werewolf in London, but it wouldn't surprise me if he did, just because he knows how to do makeup.
Nice.
And I've met him too.
You're lucky, man.
Yeah, well, like I said, you got to look out for these events and go to them. I mean, you might spend a little bit of money to get the autograph, but if you're a horror nerd and you like it, it's worth the money.
Wow. Okay. How much have you paid for an autograph?
I've paid as low as $20 all the way to $60, depending on who it is.
Wow.
But just like anything else, that has gone up. Somebody who would have charged $20 is now charging $40, and somebody who would have charged $40 is now charging $60.
So the idea is, depending on what they sign, that makes the price go up more, or
it's just the autograph usually.
Okay.
Just the fact they're just charging that much.
Nice. And I guess that, well, for you it could be personal, but for some people, I guess if they die, then that price goes up amazing, I guess.
Potentially, but I don't know if I don't have any certificates that they actually signed it, so it would be my word against nobody's really, just saying, somebody would have to take my word for it if they want to actually buy that.
Nice. When it comes to, since it's going to be the Halloween episode, is there any Halloween specials that from your childhood that you remember, or any Halloween episodes that you enjoy from TV?
I did like the Charlie Brown Halloween special they used to do back then, or the, what was it, that Garfield one?
Okay.
And that's more like cartoonish stuff, but as far as horror itself, it was more made for adults. I'm trying to think of anything specific that came on around then that was I more or less remember like the cartoons, more like kiddie stuff.
I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. For me, it would definitely be. Do you remember a show called Hey Arnold?
What is it?
Hey Arnold.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Halloween episode was like clearly my favorite because it was kiddish, but it was definitely scary. I was born, like I said, I'm a '90s kid, so I really had Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah.
Did you have any like show like that was based for kids, like that was meant to scare you at all?
Well, I probably shouldn't have been watching this as a kid because it wasn't a kid show. But Tales from the Crypt is something, I used to watch.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a kid show, but if I had to think of something that was horror-ish as a kid, it was probably those cartoons we had talked about just a minute ago.
Yes. Do you have a favorite Tales from the Crypt episode?
Oh wow, that's a tough one, man. I actually met the guy, the voice of the Crypt Keeper. Got his autograph years back. I think.
What's he look like?
I think from what I remember, he has. I felt like he had glasses and long hair. Probably maybe about my height, not really tall or short. I feel like his first name is John, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. Kasia or Kaja or something like that. And I apologize for messing up his last name. You usually just see it spelled in front of you, not spoken. But as far as those go, I really like the one with Morton Downey Jr. It's the one where he goes into basically a haunted house. That's a really good one.
Okay.
There's another really good one too with the people who are basically cannibals that eat people that are already dead or alive.
I remember those two episodes.
There's one with they were going and like basically had something tunnels on the ground to take bodies that had just been buried, that they were pretty cannibalistic. The first few seasons were really good. I did like them, and I always enjoyed the ones where like the one guy wants to get with the girl so bad, but she's not interested.
Yep.
And then she would take like a potion, and then he didn't realize that she would never leave him alone, even in death. Those were always pretty good too.
Yeah, and that storyline itself, I don't know if that's the first time it was ever told on Tales from the Crypt, but it's definitely been copied over and over and over, I've noticed.
Yeah, I've seen that before too, like where you watch a horror movie that has like 3 or 4 different things built into it, and you'll watch it, and then you'll go back and you'll see something from like the 70s that did the same type of thing. The whole classic, those calls are coming from inside the house. That's been done more than once.
Yes. My favorite episode of Tales from the Crypt would have to be, I hate to sound basic, but it's still the first episode, just because it was, I got a chance to like read the first couple of like, because it comes from a comic book.
Yeah, of course.
And that was actually like one of the first comic books, like literally page by page. And just the guy that was the electrocutioner, and he lost his job.
Yep.
Spoiler alert, guys, sorry. And I just thought they ripped it from the comic book so well.
Okay, yeah, that was that one. I remember like the first also had the one with the escaped mental patient who was Santa.
Yes.
Which once again, they've already did stuff like that already where there's a crazy Santa coming for you.
Nice. Do you ever get to a point where you've had too much horror?
No.
It did happen to me. If you get a chance, man, you should check out Shudder. It's like Netflix and Hulu, but it's nothing but horror movies.
Okay.
And that was the only time where I was like, man, it was just too much of the same story.
Okay.
Like you can only lose signal so many times.
Well, I do notice, if you have between Netflix, Hulu, and there's some apps you don't even have to pay for that you could download on your phone. One's called Tubi.
Yeah.
One's called Pluto.
Okay.
And they have all different types of movies, and there's tons of horror movies on there that you can watch.
Nice.
And I like some of the newest. I like a lot of B-rated ones too.
Okay.
That you wouldn't even have known anything about unless you were looking for it.
Nice.
I've seen some really good stuff, considering that it's it's low budget and there's really nobody famous in it, but I've seen some pretty good stuff just watching some of those movies.
I have been very surprised when it comes to B-rated movies. It's surprised if they really love what they're doing, they don't need a budget. I feel like if they definitely can, without a budget, they can really do well. Because I don't even think Get Out had like the biggest budget either, and they knocked it out the park.
What movie?
Get Out.
Okay.
I don't think they had like the biggest budget either. I mean, more than a B-roll movie, of course. But it's surprising what people can do when they have a lot of passion for a project.
What do they say? What you put into is what you get out of it, right?
True.
That's just life in general.
True, and that's definitely worked for you in your comedy. Like I've never like not seen you put on shows, except when COVID hit, of course. But you picked it up very well. So
You just have to keep trying.
true. True. So since you're here, I would love to ask. Since you're a big Michael Myers fan, big Jason fan, who wins if they fight?
Well, that's a tough one because they're both pretty much the same. That's why I think a lot of people, why they may have never actually made them fight each other, because of how much the same they are. I think the fact that Freddy talked,
Yeah.
it definitely helped the movie. But that's a tough one, man, because both of them are really just strong guys that could just take beatings. But I feel like Jason's been through a lot more, so I feel like he would have the upper hand.
Nice. We can finally see which one's faster, though.
That's true. Yeah, and like I said, if you watch, and it also depends on which Jason or which Michael Myers you're talking about, because different ones have played them differently, and if depending on who wrote it or who they used to cast in it, kind of shows sometimes the different types of Jason than Michael Myers.
True.
Especially with Jason, I mean, only one guy played him more than once. From parts 6 through 10, his name is Kane Hodder.
Yes, sir.
But if you look at all the other Jasons, like I said, you have 1 through 10. Then you have Freddy vs. Jason in a remake. So that's, 12 movies. So one guy played him 4 times. But other than that, you got, like I said, 8 other movies.
How did you feel about that with New Line Cinema and that whole ordeal? Because if you remember...
From Paramount. When they switched over to New Line from Paramount.
Yeah. Because, Paramount was holding them up. Because remember, they were supposed to do Freddy vs. Jason. And then I think they couldn't do it to New Line bought the property. And then they were able to do it. Because they were under New Line then. You're right.
Yeah, if
Paramount was holding them up.
When I bought the box set of Friday the 13th, it's only 1 through 8. They don't have anything else in there because that was 8 was the last one before New Line came a part of that.
And then New Line's the one to put Freddy. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you think that time period is why the movie kind of not suffered, but was the hype had gone a little bit?
Definitely a lot of hype had gone, but if you have true horror nerds, it's not going to matter when you do it. We're coming no matter what.
Sure.
I don't know what you really could have done to make that movie better. I mean, it had good kill scenes. You're basically taking, even though they're both slashers, you're still taking 2 totally different people, and you got to find a way to make it work together.
People don't agree with me, but I actually think that story made sense. They tied the story together well. It made sense for both of them to meet.
Yeah. It wasn't really like a horror. I mean, it was horror, but it wasn't. It wasn't really scary at all.
No.
I don't know how scary you really could have made it, just because of the type of movie it was. I think it's funny that they live so close. Camp Crystal Lake and Elm Street was so close to each other. It was just a few hours in the night, and it was so close to each other, which I thought was funny.
Yes, very. Yeah, you're right. They were very close to each other. I never even thought about that. But I thought they did a well job. When I think about Freddy vs. Jason, I think about how all the Godzilla vs. King Kong movies are just we have these 2 properties. Let's just see how it works. And I think it ended up being. But yeah, they did live very. Wow, I never noticed they did live very close to each other. Okay.
Yeah.
To talk about non chronological movies, how'd you feel about The Fly?
I liked it. I think Jeff Goldblum. Like I said, I haven't seen that in years. I think Jeff Goldblum's a good actor. So I thought that was pretty cool the way that movie.
Yeah. I think only he could have played that. I think he nailed it. It was a nice balance of horror in there also.
Yeah. Usually, like I said, the people who make these movies usually have a good idea about who they want to ask and who makes sense to play those roles.
True. Okay. Sorry. When it comes to slashers, do you care about the story as much or no?
Oh yeah, I think it's good when you have a good story behind it, how it makes sense and plays out, and why they became the way they became or why they do what they do.
Okay. I am totally the opposite. I when it comes to slashers, I'm just look, if you explain this too much, I'm gonna forget that this guy's just gonna kill a bunch of people and get away. I'd rather not hear all this story, and I think that's where people got kind of trapped up with the Rob Zombie movies.
Yeah.
Because the more you tell, the more you have to explain later.
Yes.
So that was pretty much it for me. Is there anybody that you would love to see come back in a remake that hasn't been remade yet?
Any remakes I'd like to see? I can't really think of anything. I mean, they've remade pretty much everybody. They've done Jason, they've done Freddy, they've done Michael, they've done Leatherface, they've done Chucky. They haven't. I don't think they've remade a Hellraiser. They've made more movies. I don't think they've actually remade it. I can't. They remade Night of the Living Dead. They came, which actually is interesting. They came. Tony Todd was in the remake of Night of the Living Dead, which is pretty cool. And that one they did pretty much was very close to the original too. Yeah, as far as storyline and what was going on. Kind of like when they remade Psycho.
Yes.
It's almost like every single, it was just scene for scene. They didn't change it up really at all. Which, like I said, it just depends. And which is interesting because some people complain. They're like, oh, it was just, they just went scene for scene. So you can't please everybody. So I guess when you make a horror movie, if you're going to make a remake, just do it your way for the most part. Because some people aren't going to, some people like, you didn't stay true to the original. And some people will be like, they want you to do something different with it. So
since we're talking about Hitchcock, do you have, besides that, Psycho, is any other Hitchcock movie that you that's not even horror based? Is there any movie that you like from him?
It's I did like some of the shows back in the day. I used to watch them. I think it was what came on Friday nights when they do like the naturally remakes. Because by the time I was watching it, that was definitely not live or brand new. From what I remember, I did like. I think he did The Birds, which is pretty good too.
Yes, I've seen a remake of The Birds, and it was like a B movie, and it just wasn't good. But the original Birds was, for that time, I can imagine that being like very like revolutionary for them. Nice. Are you a fan of Pumpkinhead?
Yeah. We didn't even talk about that one. Yeah, of course, because that was Lance Henriksen was in that. The guy who played Bishop from the Aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. I don't know if I've ever seen. I might have seen the second and third one of that one, but I definitely know the first one a lot better.
Yeah, I saw the first one, and then I want to say the fourth one on Sci-Fi, and it became a Sci-Fi movie, and I was like, oh, it's still Pumpkinhead, but
yeah, because that was like I said, that was definitely all original. The idea behind that from what I could think of,
Yes. Before you go, I wanted to talk to you. I very much apologize. It's a Sam Raimi movie. It's his first movie. Oh man, it's a very
Evil Dead.
Yes. Are you a fan of Evil Dead at all?
Of course. Yeah, I like what they did with that because they literally, if you watch the first one, it's a horror movie.
Yes.
Second one's horror, but they threw some comedy into it, and then when they put out Army of Darkness, that was just comedy.
Yes. How'd you feel about the TV show?
I watched a little bit of it. It was good. It didn't catch on. I didn't stick with it too long. Although I probably should have because it wasn't like I watched it and didn't like it. I just didn't really watch much of it after that. But yeah, Evil Dead, once again, really, really good stuff back when they made that. And Bruce Campbell, I really enjoyed his role in those movies.
For me, that was my first time seeing something that was like, okay, we don't have a budget yet. But then you saw them go along and it was like, okay, that's how you start off and that's how a company invests and makes it a bigger movie. And I thought that was just, for horror wise, I thought that was very revolutionary for the time to like, okay, we're not going to give you a lot. And then just to see what they gave them towards the end, it definitely shows that, you don't, like we said before, you don't need money, but once you have money, you can do way more with it.
Yeah, typically the hardest part with horror, in my opinion, is going to be depending on how graphic you want to make the kill scenes. Because that's where you'll need time and money to put into, the makeup and doing that. But a lot of times the acting, it doesn't have to be good. It's a horror movie. It's we're not looking for Academy Award winners in these movies.
Exactly. You're going to be here for maybe 30 to 45 minutes tops before you die. True.
Yeah. Most of the time, if you see a famous person in a horror movie, it's before they got really famous. With the exception of a few, obviously Jamie Lee Curtis continued to do the Halloween movies, and I remember, was it LL Cool J was in one of the
Man,
Halloweens?
when he didn't die, okay.
Busta Rhymes.
Yeah. Busta Rhymes beat up Jason.
You mean Michael?
Michael, I think
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
No,
He beat up Michael. That is still one of the best lines ever. Trick or treat, motherfucker. Like,
Yeah.
Yes, Busta Rhymes, that's true. Oh man.
So, you occasionally, I guess did find famous people to do it once. Or then, Ice-T, like I said, he was in the Leprechaun Was it back in the hood?
A lot of singers and rappers are in horror movies. You're right. Even Trey Songz was in like the latest the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and yeah, Kelly Rowland was in Freddy vs. Jason. Yeah, a lot of singers and rappers have been in horror movies throughout the years.
Yeah, I'm not sure necessarily how it turned out like that. It just did. Maybe they just liked how LL Cool J played out in that movie, and then like, well, let's bring another rapper on and try that out. But I think Tyra Banks was in that one that.
True. Yes,
she
she
was pretty
was
famous by that point too.
Yeah, very famous at that point. Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
So that's gonna happen sometimes. They might just do it just for fun. Like, hey, I'll do this for fun.
Yeah, like I'll get a check. Yeah.
Yeah. Or it might have been something a dream of theirs as a kid to do, and now they're getting the opportunity to do it. And like, well, you know what? Famous or not, I'm getting an opportunity to do this. I'm gonna be
like, why would I not? True. That's true. Yeah, that's a very good way to look at it. Why have you here? Do you go to haunted houses during this time of the year, or do you skip that?
It's been a while. I haven't been to one in a long time.
Okay.
And I've been to a couple of good ones. There's one I do want to go to one day. I feel like it's in California or out that way. You have to sign a waiver.
Oh yeah, I've seen that one. They get to touch you. Yeah.
Yeah, and from what I gather, there have been people who say, you know what, I don't want to finish this for whatever they're doing to them, and I don't know. So I did. I think escape rooms are pretty cool too. I know it's not really necessarily horror, but they did. I don't know if you saw there was a movie called Escape Room, came out a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm. By Blumhouse, yes.
Yeah, not necessarily horror, but I thought that was still pretty cool what they did with that. It was scary-ish.
They definitely nailed the premise. I would say that.
A lot of those newer movies that are scary, what makes them that way is that it's can be very realistic. I mean, most people know when you watch Jason, this isn't really going to happen. But when you watch something like that, or even if you ever watch, and this isn't the cartoon, but there's a movie called Frozen, and it might actually be on the Tubi app. That's where I watched it. But it's a movie, a scary movie that could really happen. Basically, these people go skiing, and they get stuck in the lift overnight.
Nice. Oh man, that is a great premise.
That's it's pretty cold.
Yeah,
Not to mention you're up there, it's cold, and there's once again, you said spoiler alert, there's wolves down there too.
I'll definitely, guys, definitely check that movie out, and I definitely will too.
That was very good for a low budget movie that, just did a really good job with that to where it was good for for something that could really happen in real life.
That's
like, whoa, okay.
That's perfect for low budget, just because like it stays in one spot.
Yeah, for the most part.
So.
It's kind of like that movie, and this wasn't a low budget movie, but if you watch the movie, was it Phone Booth?
Yes, I love Phone Booth.
Most of that was right in one spot. Now that wasn't low budget by any means, and had famous people in it, but sometimes it's just basically keeping something simple. Like Saw, the first one was a good bit that was just in a room, and they did a really good job with that.
Do you think they made too many?
No, I enjoyed all of them. Those were the ones that were very, like I said, with the psychological thriller type movies, where you had to think about what the heck's going on here, and then it showed how they all move together. And if you watch a lot of those movies, sometimes they put hidden meanings in it, especially George Romero.
Yes.
I didn't know this until somebody pointed out to me. If you watch the first Night of the Living Dead, what was going on in the late '60s? Civil rights, right?
Yep.
So you had the white guy and the black guy arguing, and then you had Dawn of the Dead, which was in a mall, and that was malls really, I think, started to get big in the '70s, or not long after that in the '80s. Malls were
everywhere,
really places. And then I think what they wanted to show in the '80s one, which was Day of the Dead, was more or less about with military. I know that was during the middle of the Cold War, was coming towards the end, and then if you watch Land of the Dead, it was like a class warfare type thing. You had the rich people living like the big fancy place, and then everyone else was living out in the I don't want to say out in the cold, but definitely didn't have anything nearly as nice as that tower that was in that one. So that was, you touched on different things that people were talking about. And then in Saw, if you watched, one of the ones was talking about healthcare. He couldn't receive a certain treatment, and they were showing like a health insurance company trying to find ways not to cover people. So what did the guy do? He went after people. John, the guy's name was John in the movies, was going after people, that were part of that.
Yeah. we talked about a lot of movies that started out horror and became action. I think one of the best examples is the Purge movies. Um, the first one I think is a great like horror setting. Do you think it would have stayed great if they kept that atmosphere, or do you think they made the right choice by switching to action?
I mean, I think it was still scary regardless of whether it was action or not. You know, even though there was a lot of action, it was still scary. Once again, could very well happen.
Yep.
And once again, if you watch the last one, or if you watch them as they go, it still talked about current day issues.
Very current, yes. Yeah. Nice.
The last one definitely, definitely hit home for a lot of people.
Yes. Before I get you out of here, I wanted to talk about one last movie with you, The Cabin in the Woods.
Okay.
When I think of a movie that truly is a love letter to horror movies, I think about Cabin in the Woods, which it has so many little details of so many little tropes and so many clever, like hidden, like you had to like very look hard to see. Oh, okay, that's the tip to this. That references this. Can you think of any other movie that was that much of a love letter to horror?
I feel bad. I've never seen Cabin in the Woods.
Okay.
So you might want to tell me a little bit about it so I know what to.
It's a great movie. I wouldn't spoil it for you, buddy.
Okay. So you're saying, well, what was it? I mean, obviously, I got the main idea about it, but what can you tell me about it to help me try to think of a movie that had something like that going on?
I would say it is like it has the basics of every like slasher movie, and then it makes a crucial left turn.
Okay, yeah. So if I had to think of something like that had a lot of different components to it, you might want to think of Waxworks. That was a movie that came out in the 80s. I don't know if you've ever seen that one or not, but basically you go into a wax museum and you go to each scene, and if you cross over, you go into that, and you either die or you battle to get out of it.
Was anybody big in that movie at the time? Because I feel like I have seen it, but
yeah, some people, I don't remember the names, but there were definitely a couple of people you might have seen in other movies. But if you watch that one, like I said, one of the scenes you go into is about vampires. If you go into another scene, one is about werewolves.
Okay, I got you. Okay.
And then, a couple of other things that you watch it and you're like, oh, okay.
All right. I'll definitely make sure I rewatch it. Waxworks. Waxworks. Okay.
Classic 80s movie. And they even made a second one, too.
Nice. Okay, wow. Okay, good.
Bruce Campbell's in the second one.
Okay. I'll definitely check it out then.
And that one had some elements, too. Not exactly the same, but it had the same situation where, like, you go from different things that have a lot of different horror elements to it. So, like, actually in that one, the main character goes through a scene that was in a mall fighting zombies, kind of like Dawn of the Dead.
Nice.
So that was one, and then he did a Frankenstein-type monster thing where he has to go through. So basically the main character, or anybody that goes into these scenes, they have to battle through that to be able to go on. If they don't, they pretty much become a part of it forever or die.
Nice. All right, I'll definitely check it out. Thank you for coming on, man, and dropping these gems and talking about horror. Is there anything you would like to say to your fans?
Yeah, when it comes to comedy, like I said, if you're ever in the Rock Hill, Fort Mill area, just look up the hashtag Corrado Show. And my last name is spelled Corrado. And if you want, you could always just cheat by looking at Mike's shirt. Come see our shows. I put on all different types of comedy. You got comedians from all walks of life, all different styles. And who knows, you might get to know somebody that, they just got their start, or they've been doing comedy underground. And then boom, things blew up for them, and now they're touring the country. I do know comedians that, it may not be made to save Dave Chappelle or George Carlin status, but they are doing it as a profession and getting to go around the country and, do what they love. So feel free, if you're ever in the Rock Hill, Fort Mill area, to come check out an open mic or a showcase and come support local comedy.
All right. Nobody works harder than this guy, I promise you. Thank you guys. This is PoppinCulture, and thank you for listening.